Good afternoon. We take over Kathy San Gabriel and Robert Tan for anchoring duties for PTV4's special coverage of the World Economic Forum 2014. I am JJ Atienza.
And I am JC Tejano. This morning was a very busy one for delegates to the forum as certain activities took place simultaneously. There was a lot of action going on and there will be more as the forum progresses.
As we know by now, President Aquino is set to deliver a message at the opening plenary session a few minutes from now. And we shall be bringing this to you live from the Makati Shangri-La Hotel. Back on PTV4's special coverage of the World Economic Forum on East Asia 2014, what is competitiveness as defended or defined by the World Economic Forum itself? Competitiveness is a set of institutions, policies, and factors that determine the level of productivity of a country. Ara Perez illustrates how the Philippines has gone far in meeting this definition.
The Philippines is recognized as one of the greatest economic comebacks in recent years, making it the ideal venue for this year's World Economic Forum on East Asia. 4 years into the Aquino administration, the Philippines has snapped a spot in the field of global competitiveness. According to a report from the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Index 2013, the Philippines ranked 59th, jumping 6 previous year's standing. Meanwhile, among competitiveness in the Southeast Asian region, the Philippines was declared 6 out of 10 countries in Southeast Asia, moving past Vietnam, Laos People's Democratic Republic, Cambodia, and Myanmar. Through this, the Philippines has achieved the moniker Economic Tiger alongside Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei. As if this could not be enough, the country posts the largest jump worldwide in the International Finance Corporation's Ease of Doing Business Index, going from 30 places to its current ranking of 108. Truly, beyond crisis and calamities, both man-made and natural, the Philippines is made to stand past economies, all set to fulfill its goal of moving from the bottom third of global competitiveness rankings to the top third by 2016. This goal may seem far-fetched, but not to the World Bank. The international organization revealed a 7.2% increase in the Philippine economy in 2013 despite the harrowing effects of Super Typhoon Yolanda. The country owes this growth to its macroeconomic fundamentals, investors' confidence, a huge factor in the foreign direct investment's 20% growth or $3.2 billion in 2013. All this supported domestic demand and expansion in the investment and manufacturing sectors. Private consumption also rose to 5.6%, plus private construction at 8%, materializing largely through the business process outsourcing or BPO industry. The BPO industry, in turn, is one of the biggest sources of job generation and revenues in the country, expected to create around 124,000 full-time jobs in 2014 alone and hitting the $25 billion mark by 2016. Manila's spot as the world's third BPO destination proves of no surprise after all. Government efforts in improving the labor force in all sectors have also been non-stop, as the Social Weather Services survey showed a decrease in unemployment rate from October to December last year's 27.5% to first quarter this year's 25.7% unemployment rate. Remittances from overseas Filipino workers also registered growth at 6.8% year-on-year in January 2014 to reach $2 billion, mostly coming from the United States, Japan, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Just last May 1, the government launched job fairs in over 60 venues nationwide in a bid to boost local and overseas labor competitiveness through services, production, professional, and technical related jobs. In an agriculture-based country, food security has also arrived at its full realization through the utilization of the mechanisms in provinces including Pangasinan, Nueva Ecija, and Isabela. All efforts set at achieving a 16.6% poverty rate in 2016 from its level of 25.2% in 2012. This early, gross domestic product is projected at a 6.6% growth to 6.9% in 2015, one of the most remarkable economic improvements globally. All of these figures are tangible testaments that the current administration has successfully sent a clear-cut message to all world leaders that good governance equates to good economic results. So join us alongside the 600-strong delegates of the 23rd World Economic Forum and witness as the country makes history, surely to be etched in the map of the world. For the People's Television, this is Ara Perez.
Thank you, Ara Perez, for that comprehensive report. JC, the Philippines hosts the WEF, or the World Economic Forum, for the first time in the 23 years of existence of WEF. And I think we are gaining ground on this occasion, considering that we have a very good performance in macroeconomics and in a lot of other aspects and components of competitiveness.
Actually, it's a very exciting time, not just for the Philippines, but for Southeast Asia. For the longest time, Southeast Asia has been in the news primarily because of Singapore's growth and Thailand's growth. Now we're experiencing growth from different countries, not just actually the Philippines, but even Vietnam and Indonesia, wherein we can see that the region has a huge potential as an economic force in the global order. So this is an exciting moment, not just for the Philippines, but for the entire ASEAN.
Not just exciting, JC, because I think the president that we have now and the policies that he is imposing and the policies that he is now adopting for the Philippines is attuned with what the WEF's theme is all about, and it's all about global competitiveness. And part of these components are, of course, good governance. And the good governance policies that we have adopted has taken a turn for good, because from once a sick man of Asia, the Philippines is now one of the countries that is being eyed by the global economic forces with regard to investments, especially foreign development investments.
Right, JJ, but Ara makes an interesting point as well as regards natural disasters and catastrophes. She was saying that despite these natural disasters, we are experiencing growth, and in fact, we leaped from the 6th place to the 59th place or 59th rank in 2012 to 2013 in the Global Competitiveness Index, which is in fact despite Yolanda or Typhoon Haiyan. So this is interesting in a sense, because we have to know as well, does this mean that our reforms or our government reforms can actually overshadow the problems of natural disasters in the country? I think though that at some point we have to face this problem eventually.
Exactly, JC. No? Precisely, there are also issues that are being talked about regarding the speed of our reforms that we adopt, specifically regarding the rehabilitation of those that were victimized by Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda. 6 months after, we are adopting a lot of other policies that will ensure that all these matters that we do to help the victims are being delivered to them on time, because as we know, it's again typhoon season in a few weeks' time.
Exactly.
However, JC, in a more positive note, we see that the Philippines became the role model in terms of, in certain areas such as career advancement for women. The ASEAN region is making us their role model when it comes to these kinds of opportunities for women.
For one, we have had 2 female presidents in the country, but that, of course, that's beside the point. That in fact, in the Philippines, we have probably, one of the highest gender ratings or gender rankings in the world as regards gender sensitivity. So this is really interesting how we can easily break the so-called glass ceiling for female workers, for female managers, and female supervisors. And of course, there is infrastructure. We do not refer only to physical structures, but specifically to systems and networks that can fast-track economic growth. We talk about transportation and communications to facilitate access to markets and the mobility of workers. Let's hear it from Wendy Goma about infrastructure.
It takes strong leadership and governance to sustain a country's economy. The World Economic Forum, as an independent international organization, has proven itself committed to improving the state of the world by engaging business, political, academic, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agenda. What basically develops the economy is through infrastructure. Infrastructure are the set of interconnected structural elements that provide the framework for supporting an entire structure of development. This is when the government, private sector, and the construction cooperate all together for one main goal. The Infrastructure and Urban Development Industry Partnership focuses on some of the most pressing economic issues related to the sector and on aligning the community interests with the global, regional, and industry agenda. Many of these ideas and solutions proposed by the WEF resulted to a cooperative success with leaders from government, civil society, and private sector. The main goal of the WEF is to become valuable and internationally recognized partner for all stakeholders involved in the sectors of engineering, construction, and real estate, while shaping the agenda to create real opportunities to gather leaders, raise global awareness, frameworks, and actionable recommendation in the context of improving the state of the world. While its industry partners have opportunities for significant interaction to discuss things with government leaders, experts, and leaders from other industries ranging from financial services, investors, mining, chemicals, oil and gas to utilities, and more. The WEF finds the best region to hold it is in East Asia, since the growth is generally much faster and has been sustained than in other regions. The attack country is to gain investments. It is but the nation's privilege as we welcome hundreds of political and business leaders attending the 23rd World Economic Forum on East Asia in the country this week. To this forum, we are expected to showcase our economic success story during the World Gathering. As Secretary Coloma puts it, let us show our visitors why it's more fun in the Philippines to witness the other aspects of Filipino life, such as kindness and hospitality of our people. But despite the string of economic achievements, Coloma recognizes that much more work to be done to generate more jobs, promote growth, and lessen poverty. This region has the world's biggest populations, meaning the biggest number of entrepreneurs and workers, of producers and consumers. While Asia needs to learn from Europe and North America, we have to avoid bureaucratism that will get in the way to more growth and prosperity. We cannot deal with economic development without investments in the infrastructure. The whole point of having a city and infrastructure is to bring people together, create new things, and create wealth. For the People's Television Network, this is Wendy Goma reporting.
That was Wendy Goma for her report on infrastructure. This is a very interesting aspect as well of economic development, especially now that Secretary Coloma and practically the entire Aquino administration has declared its attention or focus on infrastructure development in the Philippines.
Exactly, JC. And infrastructure is not just the roads and buildings that we know of. It also includes communication and the interconnection of farm-to-market roads, and also the interconnection between suppliers and companies. Now, meanwhile, there's more to infrastructure than meets the eye, but let's take a break. You are watching PTV4's special coverage of the World Economic Forum on East Asia 2014. And we're back at PTV for a special coverage of the World Economic Forum in Southeast Asia 2014. JC, this morning we have just highlighted in several of the sessions at the Makati Shangri-La Hotel the Philippines' leadership in gender equity, good governance, and social entrepreneurship. So JC, because of this, people have been asking regarding free trade agreement and what would happen to the Philippine economy when these agreements have been enforced.
Right, that was right when I entered the coverage for PTV, and in fact, a while ago, they were talking about trade liberalization in the sense that it is possible that we can lower our tariffs so that trade will be easier between ASEAN countries. And I think, as we were talking about it a while ago, JJ, it is also a key consideration as to which products will be the emphasis of the Philippines when it comes to trade with ASEAN, because we're not very different, especially when it comes to the agricultural industry, particularly because we have rice producers in Vietnam, for example.
Which we trained JC, by the
exactly.
way, years
and
ago.
So which will be the comparative advantage or the niche of the Philippines when it comes to trade with other Southeast Asian nations? I think that's a huge question that we will have to answer, especially considering that there will be ASEAN integration in 2015.
Exactly. And the question that comes to mind is, can the Philippines sustain such integration? How long can the Philippines hang on when we open our trade and when we lower our tariffs towards other products from other countries or from the region itself? Can we sustain it? Can we be very competitive when it comes to all these products that we're supposed to be showcasing? And that's the big question, JC. What product should we showcase regarding this integration?
There was a point made a while ago about talents, about human resources, or the potential of services from Southeast Asia. So I think that's also a possibility for the Philippines, for one.
Well, what we notice is that the BPO industry is thriving here in the Philippines, and most foreign countries would rather contract with the Philippines regarding their business processing offices.
Exactly.
But I don't think that we should simply bank on BPOs. I suppose the Philippines has something up its sleeves with regard to its showcased products.
But you know, JJ, I think we all discuss maybe a little later the laws with regard as well to imports and exports in the Philippines, especially when it comes to professionals and even on our land laws, which you of course know as a lawyer, so we can consult you without any legal fee.
I have a mouthful to say about that.
Right.
Meanwhile, amid a democratic landscape, an election happens every so many number of years. On many occasions, a change in administration affects the laudable development projects of a previous leadership. Either these are stopped or are changed. In many cases, the national welfare can be sacrificed. Freddy Abando asks, what will happen to the economic boom now being experienced by the Philippines when President Aquino's term expires in 2016?
The eyes of the global community is focused on the Philippines for its hosting of the World Economic Forum, a strategic platform to showcase its economic gains in recent years. Leadership in President Aquino's commitment of good governance provided the spark that triggered a series of reforms which led to the rise of the people's confidence in government as an agent for change.
It's a very good opportunity for us to show what we have achieved so far, what this government has achieved so far, because people out there have been hearing about the changes, the reforms, the important developments taking place in this country, but it's very good for them to see personally, physically, to be here, you know, and see it for themselves. And I think at the and for us, what we really want to get out of this is also to excite them even more to invest in this country, to visit this country, to engage with us by trade, people exchange, innovations, partnerships of all kinds.
They recognize that we are one of the fastest growing countries within the ASEAN and in fact within the region for the past 3 years. So it's a recognition and we are very happy about that. And the fact that they're meeting here certainly will also call attention of our local businessmen, our leaders here, to the importance of economic progress and development.
No less than the President's Chief Economic Advisor, NEDA's Secretary General, Arsenio Balisacan, is bullish on the impact of the World Economic Forum as the country intensifies the drive to sustain high economic growth to reduce poverty incidence. The 7.2% GDP growth in 2013 is expected to continue until the end of the President's term in 2016. All sectors of the economy are up for the first quarter of the year. Trade and industry, to include exports, tourism, which is expected to hit 10 million foreign visitors in 2016. Agriculture has gained in food security, especially in rice and corn production. The flow of foreign investments has led to the surge of manufacturing. Information technology has made the Philippines a major global player.
The most basic, the most fundamental determinant of growth is good governance. Without the set of governance institutions, the leadership, particularly in this particular case, the economic leadership that the President has taken, we would not be where we are now.
I think infrastructure has got to be the next big thing that we need to work on. This administration has made headway in education and in health, but in infrastructure we need to pick up the pace. I think number one on our list in the business community for infrastructure is airports, particularly here in Manila, which is the gateway. We airports and add airport capacity.
The timing can't be any better now that we've witnessed 3 or 4 years of strong economic growth, particularly on the resurgence of industry. I think it enables multinationals and policymakers to witness for themselves the growth and the resurgence that we're talking about.
So much hope is on the horizon for the country. The country's banking sector is solid and stable. Growth has led to increased incomes for consumption and investments. The booming construction is slowly answering the demand for low-cost housing. The skyline of Metro Manila showcases the Philippines' success story.
This is where governance will come in, to make sure that the money that we borrow, the money that we save, will be invested well. And our banking supervision framework is a very, very structure, which is make sure that the banks are well capitalized, so that when they make mistakes, the owners will pay for the mistake, not the taxpayer.
President Aquino's track record in dealing with corruption, which led to more transparency and accountability, is a shining model for other leaders of the world. However, a major concern is what happens after the president completes his term in 2016. Will his successor continue reforms to serve the national interest?
Clearly, leadership with criteria has helped the country. In the past, we've seen leadership without integrity absolutely damage the country. Integrity has to be one of the key factors, I think, behind the success, and I think it's no accident that when all these conferences come to Manila, the number one observation is governance has definitely changed for the better, but the number one question in people's minds is, can we maintain it, and what is it going to take to maintain this? And I think it's institutional of all the policies that we see, and it is leadership and integrity.
For the People's Television Network, this is Freddie Abando reporting.
JJ, Freddie takes a very important question in his report. Will the reforms on good governance continue after President Aquino, particularly because our indicators or our predictions span years beyond President Aquino's term, and in fact decades for some predictions before we reach that status of a major economy in a global system. So it's an interesting question whether or not we can sustain this growth?
I think the answer lies within the ordinary Filipino people who will elect the next leader of this nation. We have to make sure that the next administration or the next leader that we will put there in the palace will be someone who has the strong political will to continue its reforms regarding integrity, as Arturo Luz has said, and not only integrity, but entire picture of good governance has to be painted well. Otherwise, we will not be able to sustain it well beyond 2015 when the integration happens.
And of course, we can also try legislative institutions to the point that we can legislate maybe anti-corruption mechanisms to ensure that the Philippines will not go back to its past of this so-called culture of corruption.
We will be talking more about it, JC, after this break.
And we're back to the special coverage of the 23rd World Economic Forum in East Asia, held here in the Philippines.
Right now, the question that comes to mind, JC, is why Southeast Asia? Because right now, this is the region where nations are seen as headed towards being tiger economies. One of the key areas where the Philippines is posting growth is tourism. It is not surprising, of course, because despite recent calamities, tourists have never been as eager to visit the country as now. This report on tourism from Christine Santos.
At least 2 heads of state and about 600 business and civil society leaders from over 30 countries will be in Metro Manila from May 21 to 23 for the World Economic Forum on East Asia. In its 23 years in the region, this is the first time the Philippines will host the said forum. This was seen as an opportunity to showcase the gains the country has achieved by treading the straight path of good governance. Through the increasing number of meetings, incentive travel, conventions and events or MICE in the country, the Philippines is optimistic tourism revenues will be boosted along with the attainment of tourist arrivals targets in the next 3 years. Last year, MICE accounted for only 12% of the country's total tourism income. But in 2016, Tourism Secretary Ramon Jimenez Jr. said they are hoping to hit the 22% target revenues from MICE under the National Tourism Development Plan. The Tourism Department has projected tourism receipts to hit $6.07 billion in 2014, reaching $8 billion in 2016. To accomplish this, the agency, through the Tourism Promotions Board, has been selling the Philippines as a MICE destination in the travel exhibits and conventions it attends abroad. The government is facilitating the construction of bigger convention and exhibition venues. Looking at the map of Asia, Philippines is a very convenient venue for Southeast Asian nations. The country, being at the center, has the power to cut travel time and conference time for everyone. The Open Skies policy has also made it easier. Sponsoring big forums like WEF would signal the confidence of MICE proponents on the capability of the Philippines to host huge high-level business and economic meetings. During the World Economic Forum, the Philippines hopes to discuss with its counterparts the growing tourism industry and how to sustain the growth momentum. This coincides with the meeting's theme, Leveraging Growth for Equitable Progress, which program is built on 3 pillars, namely achieving equitable progress, advancing models for sustainable growth, and realizing regional connectivity. The WEF meetings would give the government an opportunity to showcase the Philippine miracle, referring to the country's economic turnaround under the Aquino administration. But Jimenez, whose leadership has seen the tourism sector grow more than 2-fold over the last 2 years, said the country's turnaround was not miraculous. He further added there is tremendous benefit to good governance. Jimenez underscored the leadership of President Aquino, who he said has focused on tourism as one of the pillars of growth and inclusiveness. This 2014 tourism projects will be receiving 30 billion peso budget from the national government. The budget will target 10 strategic tourism areas in the country, dubbed as International Tourism Gateway Clusters.
In the United Nations World Tourism Organization Global Climate Change Forum held in Legazpi, Albay, President Aquino has urgently called for action to address climate change as it poses grave threat to the public. He also stressed that a friendly climate in the region has a big role in attracting more tourists.
Climate change is real. It is a threat, not simply to our industries or to our economies. It is a grave threat to all our peoples. The sooner we move on a more united front, and the sooner we agree on a systematic effort to address the problem, the sooner we can make a more profound impact on changing the effects of climate change. On top of this, in 2011, we beat our initial 2016 target of 35.5 million domestic travelers, recording 37.5 million in 2011 alone. Allow me to repeat that. We met our target for 2016, 5 years ahead of schedule. This pushed us to set our sights higher. Now we have increased our 2016 target to 56.1 million domestic travelers, and we will remain in active pursuit of this target as well.
Aside from WEF and UNWTO, the Philippines will host the APEC meeting next year. Jimenez also said they are also preparing for the Visit Philippines Year 2015, which is an invitation to all to come and partake of the enduring promise of more fun in the Philippines. There is also the ASEAN Tourism Fair or ATF in 2016. According to Jimenez, ATF would be the last major tourism event in the Aquino administration, which they wanted to be big and successful. The tourism sector will not only benefit the country's economy, but also the total employment rate. This as the industry was seen to generate as much as 18 to 20% of total jobs by 2016. Founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, said, "Progress is only impressive when industry and government leaders are fully committed to equitable distribution and inclusive growth." Philippines is now Asia's bright spot. The country is hoping that its economic comeback story would encourage the public, business leaders, civil society, and governments across the Pacific and the globe to take this opportunity to invest and ride the momentum of this meaningful progress. For the People's Television Network, this is Christine Santos.
Thank you, Christine Santos, and we take you back to Makati Shangri-La Hotel for the remaining sessions.
And so they're not willing to go through the process of difficulty. Throughout the whole process, you want knowledge, you want skills, you want experience, you want technology, but you also want that whole wisdom. So that experience, that wisdom of going through life with lots of difficulties, and you respond in the right way, in a fighting spirit, in the Eastern fighting spirit, you might get a chance to make.
Tessie?
No, I guess he has. I agree with him. I don't have much to add on to that.
The Silicon Valley is a very particular model. I mean, it's about a collection of capital that happens to be one place with a remarkable culture and ambience and the whole environment that goes with it. It's a nice thought that one could recognize and replicate that here, but it's worth remembering that the innovation models that have applied here have often been through large corporations doing wonderful things that are truly innovative. I mean, Samsung is giving Apple a run for its money, and the two could not be more different in terms of the way they go about innovating and how they've chosen to do that. So I think we should be careful before we think there is only one model, and it's the Silicon Valley model. Here people innovate through a more collective approach, through multidisciplinary, rather than the hero entrepreneur. The hero entrepreneur exists, but I think one of the challenges we need to put out there is making sure we have an array of role models, and don't lead everyone to think they have to be the next big superhero, because it does start exactly as Mark says. What really matters is what that mom does, or what the small business owner does, and how they choose to build their business over time. Because that's actually more likely to be the model in Asia than thinking somehow or other we're going to transport Silicon Valley and put it into one of these economies.
We talked about how there are various parts involved in encouraging entrepreneurship, the family, education, so on and so forth. Should anyone be taking the lead?
In terms of?
Encouraging entrepreneurship. Should the government take the lead?
No.
Should private sector take the lead?
Entrepreneurs are everywhere. It's a matter of giving them more opportunities in terms of, like for us in the malls, we give them opportunities to market their items, and or to provide their services. And some of them really go and a bigger business, and also in terms of financial availability. I think this too will encourage a lot of those people who would think out of the box.
I think leadership is very important in this space. And I don't think that leadership rests just with one entity. I would probably expand what you said from government to family to schools, also to things like the entertainment industry. When we speak about role models, we all know that people are crazy about Hollywood films and Bollywood films and Nollywood films. Let's celebrate entrepreneurship through these, because it's a proven way of actually exciting and stimulating thinking and behavior. In our schools, what we try to do is we model behaviors and attitudes. And that, I think, is a very powerful way of encouraging entrepreneurship. It's something that we should look at. But coming to an earlier point that you raised, I think history teaches us something very important, which is those that are high income and low income countries have traditionally had less to, therefore are willing to put things at risk. I think for the region, the risk is that as you become more affluent and more middle income, you stop taking the risk. That, I think, is a big danger.
I mean, just on that, government absolutely has a role to play, and I think it's important that we recognise it, because at the end of the day, somebody has to join up what the educators do with what the youth need and what employers are looking for. And I think it's very hard for that to happen if government doesn't step forward and play a real role. And that may be one of the differences, incidentally, between the more individually driven economies of the West and the economies over here, which are driven in a rather different way. But government does have a role to play, and if government chooses not to play that role, then who is it who's going to help align the visions? Who is it who's going to help make sure the curricula are done in a way that works? Now, I love the notion that it could be done individually by lots of entrepreneurial instincts, but I think if we're going to move societies at a scale that they need to move, government has to play a role.
We can't wait for the government. It will take a long time.
Well, I agree with that, but I don't think you can say that government doesn't have a role to play. I mean, I agree completely.
The government has a role to play in every aspect.
Yep.
But, I guess that's why there are entrepreneurs, because it doesn't matter whether there is assistance from the government or not. They know how to navigate their business.
Agreed.
I agree. I think we need to take a bigger picture perspective, that we are all in this one calling, one enterprise, that for the next generation, that we are all stakeholders.
Yep.
But within all this, the government have to make sure that it's not coming out with wrong policies.
Absolutely.
So the worst enemy is not corruption, but it is wrong government policy.
I agree.
So that begs the question, should entrepreneurs be in government? I mean, if you want the right policies to be in place, policies that would encourage entrepreneurship, should there be entrepreneurs in government?
Businessmen should be in government.
James, are you for it?
The spirit of the entrepreneur should be in government. But governments require a different set of skills. You've got to understand social, political issues, bureaucracy, and it's just totally different. So there must be a total perspective in this. Not every businessman can go into government and be successful.
But it is important. It is important for entrepreneurs to be in government, a representation.
The entrepreneurship spirit.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is very important in this is that entrepreneurs should be in government, but they should also be in schools. So because entrepreneurs are phenomenally disruptive people.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that needs to be shaken up is our education systems.
But
we have a global learning crisis today. Don't be mistaken about that. And governments haven't evolved the school model for the last 100, 200 years. And yet they expect better results. And so the only people that have this track record are entrepreneurs. I mean, as the World Economic Forum, the responsibility lies equally with all of us. When was the last time we went into a school to speak? When was the last time that we put out there the opportunity to come and shadow us at work? I think that's really important. I'll buy you a drink later.
Tessie, you were shaking your head.
No, I was just thinking, if you teach them entrepreneurship at an early age, there will be nobody in the classes. You know, I think in school we expect you to teach them how to be disciplined, and then they can gradually grow into and be exposed to more creativity as they become more matured.
A divide between government and business is not a good thing. I mean, I think if you're asking what at the end of the day characterizes the US, the reality is they have a lot of business people in government. We can debate whether that's a good or bad. I think for the entrepreneur, it's not always obvious why they'd want to be in government. But if you say entrepreneurship is about creativity, not taking no for an answer, being able to break down barriers, solve problems,
finding solutions.
You'd love to see them. You'd love to see the entrepreneurs in government. The challenge is more, do entrepreneurs want to get involved with government given all the obstacles that we've just discussed? But the answer, I think, would be you'd love to see entrepreneurs in government because it would close that gap, which unfortunately is all too real, between business and the individual entrepreneur. And if that gap persists and this disconnect between business and broader society, that is not a good environment for business. So somehow or other we have to find a way to close that gap.
Behind these government decisions is the set of belief system, value system, philosophies. If today, by and large, government's thinking is still that the solution of all of society's problems, business, economics, education, what have you, is a bigger government, more regulations.
That's bad.
So I think this needs to change, and the business community do play a big part to influence government decisions.
Strong views. At this stage, I'd like to open the discussion to the floor. If there are any questions, obviously there are. Could we have the microphone, please? And if you could introduce yourself first. Is there a microphone in the house? Could you please stand up and introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Vivian Lau from Junior Achievement Asia Pacific.